Okay, so we're going to start chapters 11 and 12, which is the skeletal system. I just need to make sure that the volume's not too high. Okay. Okay, so 11 is skeletal, 12 is muscles. So the functions of the skeletal, the first one is that it's going to support your body. So without your bones, you can't sit up, you can't stand up, you can't move. Okay, it protects the soft body parts. Okay, so your brain, which is like one of the most valuable parts of your body, controls everything, is in your skull. So it's totally encased and protected. If you think about your heart is in the middle of your ribs. Okay, the skeletal system also produces blood cells, so hemopoiesis, which we've already talked about. It serves as a mineral reservoir for calcium and phosphate. It does store some fat as well. Okay, and it's a point of attachment for our muscles, so our muscles use it to make us move. Okay, now the anatomy of a long bone. So here's the parts of a long bone. So this long part in the middle is the diaphysis. Okay, so that's the diaphysis, that's the shaft of the bone. It's made of compact bone around the edges, and it's filled with yellow bone marrow. Okay, the epiphysis, that's the ends of the bone. Okay, in the ends of the bone, it's usually spongy bone, and in the spongy bone, in between the bone parts, the hard parts, that's where we're going to have red bone marrow. Articular cartilage is cartilage that covers the ends of the bone. It's usually hyaline cartilage. It kind of acts like Teflon coating on a pan. It's going to allow the bones to move smoothly against each other so that there's not a lot of friction there. They don't rub together. There's cartilage on the end that protects them. Okay, yellow bone marrow is where we store fat. Red bone marrow is where we make blood cells. Usually red bone marrow is in the spongy bone in the ends, and it's in the flat bones. The periosteum is the outer covering of the bone. It's living. Okay, peri is always around, so it's around the outside of it. If you think about, like, if you get a bone at the market, like a soup bone or something, in that bone there is a lot of fat. Okay, so that's yellow fat. And if you had the ends of the bone, you could see the spongy bone. Okay, now if we took the compact bone and we looked at it under a microscope, this is what we would see. We would see a whole bunch of little tree trunks. Okay, and those tree trunks are called osteons. Okay, so they have a central canal in the middle, and in that canal there are blood vessels. Okay, so that's how the blood supply is going to get to the cells. So in the bone there are living cells, and those cells are called osteocytes. Okay, and they live in these little spaces in the bone, and the spaces are called the lacunae. Okay, so it's just a whole bunch of these circles all compacted in there tightly together. So those are osteons. In the middle, so if this is spongy bone has plates. It's not all nice and organized like this compact bone. It actually is more like Swiss cheese, and in the spaces, that's where we're going to have red bone marrow. Okay, so 3 types of cartilage. Okay, so cartilage, if you remember from earlier on, it's connective tissue that's flexible, and the way we identify it is on the types of fibers in there and the types of cells in there. How many cells you have. So it contains collagen and elastic fibers, so that makes it strong and flexible. Okay, it doesn't have nerves, and it doesn't have any blood vessels, so it's going to get all of its nutrients and the waste removed from tissue that's around it. So it takes a really long time for cartilage to heal. Like if somebody tears their meniscus, it doesn't heal. Okay, now different types of cartilage are found in different places. So the first type is hyaline cartilage. Hyaline cartilage is found at the ends of the long bones, okay, like your femur, the bones in your arms, your fingers. Okay, it's found in your nose. It's found covering the ends of the ribs. Okay, the costal cartilage. It's in your larynx. It's also in the trachea. It's what keeps the trachea open. Okay, now fibrocartilage has collagen and elastic fibers in there, more collagen fibers. And it's found in your intervertebral discs, so the disc between the vertebrae in your back. So if someone says they have a slipped disc, they're talking about the fibrocartilage that's in between those vertebrae. Okay, the meniscus in your knee is also fibrocartilage. Okay, it kind of functions as a shock absorber so that the bones don't bounce against bones. It's like a cushion in between the two. Okay, elastic cartilage is found in the epiglottis. It's also found in your ears. It's more flexible than hyaline cartilage. Okay, now if we talk about fibrous connective tissue, so how things are hooked together, we have ligaments, which connect bone to bone. And I always tell everyone, think ligaments start with an L, so like, so they're connecting like things, so bones. Tendons connect muscles to bones at a joint. Okay, so this is a picture of your Achilles tendon. Okay, so here's the bone, the calcaneus, and it's being attached to the muscles at the back of your leg, like your gastrocnemius, the back of your calf. Okay, so tendons, 2. Okay, and then articulation is just a joint, so it's any place where 2 bones come together. Okay, now here's a list of cells that are involved in bone formation. Okay, so the first one is osteoblasts. So osteoblasts are bone forming cells. So I always remember blast and build. So B and B. Okay, osteocytes, these are the mature cells. They're just going to maintain the bone. They develop from osteoblasts. So osteoblasts are actually kind of immature. Osteoclasts, okay, these are cells that absorb bone. Okay, and we're going to talk about them more in a minute. Okay, we also have chondrocytes. Chondrocytes are cartilage forming cells. So anytime you see chondro, you're going to think cartilage. Anytime you see osteo, you're going to think bone. Okay, so now there's 2 ways that bone can actually develop. Okay, and ossification is the technical word for how we form bone. Okay, so one is called intramembranous ossification. It's usually in flat bones. It happens in the fetus. The bone develops between 2 sheets of fibrous connective tissue. And we don't really talk about it too much. Endochondrial ossification is a way that we make bone using cartilage, like using a cartilage template. And this occurs in most bones. Okay, so how new bone forms. Okay, so first what happens is we have a cartilage model. Okay, so the chondrocytes in a developing, like say a fetus, okay, the chondrocytes, which are the cartilage shells, lay down hyaline cartilage in the shape that the new bone should be. Okay, then what happens is we form this bony collar around it. So the osteoblasts do that. Okay, then we make this thing called the primary ossification center. So osteoblasts go into the bone, okay, which is not bone yet, into the cartilage, okay, by blood cells, and they start laying down spongy bone. Okay, and then we have secondary ossification sites. So this is the second place where bone is going to start to be laid down. Okay, these are found in the ends of the bones. Okay, and then the fifth step is growth from the epiphyseal plate. Okay, so when we're kids, or up until our epiphyseal plate closes, we're going to grow from these cartilage bands. So let me show you here. Okay, so there are 5 steps. So here's the cartilage model. Okay, and then osteoblasts arrive and they start to lay down bone. Okay, so this blue stuff is all cartilage. Then we're going to start to lay down this harder bone. Okay, and there's like a collar around it. Okay, so all of this is caused by triggers in fetal development and embryology. Okay, so the blood vessels come in, okay, and they bring in osteoblasts. Okay, and then we start to form more spongy bone. Okay, and eventually we're going to form the medullary cavity. We'll start making a edge of compact bone around it. Okay, and then the cartilage will start getting pushed out to the ends. Okay, so this is the cartilage. Okay, so what happens then after you're born, okay, you have, here's the shaft, the diaphysis. Okay, here's spongy bone at the epiphysis. But in between those, we have a layer of cartilage. And that cartilage is called the growth plate. Okay, so we're going to grow from here until we're done growing, until after adolescence. Okay, so how does bone lengthen? Okay, so here's the epiphyseal growth plate. So lots of times when kids break bones, this is the most fragile part, so it'll break around the growth plate. Most of the time it's not a big deal. The growth plate doesn't heal over. Everything just heals the way it's supposed to. Okay, so we're going to grow from here. Okay, so what's going to happen is we're going to, the chondrocytes are going to, they actually open up. They make the space bigger, and then they start laying down bone inside. So we're kind of growing from the ends out. Okay, if you look at this, it kind of shows you, okay, so here's the epiphysis. Okay, so here's this. Okay, here's where nothing's going on, a resting zone. Okay, then here we're making all these cartilage cells, and we're opening up this space in here, so we make it longer. And then we start laying down more bone down here. So we're growing from the ends. Okay, now, how do hormones affect? Whoops, I'm gonna stop here.